Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down, as always, with Mr. Keith Myers, our co-host, and we are going to have a conversation today about offensive tackles in this draft class as we head full speed to the NFL draft in just a month, like 5 weeks. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
We haven't even done a second mock draft yet.
I know.
It's crazy. And we still have the entire defense to profile. But here we are with the offensive side of the ball, the tackle class, which is our last offensive position group we're going to look at. And then we switch over to defensive tackles, edge rushers, et cetera, in the few weeks to follow. And then we're going to have a conversation, I think, about positional value in general in this draft, Seahawks strategy, roster building strategy, if it really matters, if it does matter, how much does it matter, all those kind of things. So welcome in, Keith. I hope you're doing well. Let's get this conversation rolling.
Yeah. So you and I talked originally. We were like, okay, this is probably going to be a fairly short show because, the Seahawks don't need a tackle, right? They've got Charles Cross sign long term. They've got Abe Lucas re-sign. He's going to be around for 3 more years. You've got Amari Knight as your developmental guy, the guy that's back at the roster, but has that really high upside if you can develop him. And you've got Josh Jones, who's back as your swing tackle, a guy that can back up 4 positions and has that just tremendous value on game day of being able to back up 4, at 4 positions. And we saw that Josh Jones could fill in for a starter for a couple of games. I mean, they had to
not only that,
him.
but the left side.
Yeah. They had to protect him a little bit, keep a tight end there. You saw Saubert. You saw Saubert next to him pretty much on every play. But he did it. Those weren't scrub teams he was playing. Those were must-win games against playoff teams in San Francisco and the Rams, and he played well. So you've got, what do you need? You need like roster filler for camp bodies.
Well, let's talk about it. So I want to reinforce what you just said about Josh Jones. I mean, talk about an underrated player on the roster and a absolutely fantastic signing in free agency last year. When he was signed in the offseason during free agency, we were both like, meh. I mean, you look at his resume and it was, okay, he was drafted out of Houston, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. And we kind of liked him in that draft, but, I think he went in the second round and he was kind of an athletic-y, Seahawks-y kind of player. So we were both thinking maybe the Seahawks would expend a pick and draft a guy like that. They drafted Abe Lucas, and
which is a better draft pick, better player to lower round, like
overall. Yeah. And so they ended up picking him up, and it was a totally low level thing. Okay, he's going to compete for a roster spot. And that was the end of the conversation, really. Guy comes in and really works hard. They kept him around. You always heard good things about him in camp and so on. But he came in, and I'm telling you, it didn't even miss a beat as far as pressures allowed. You never talked about him. Like, he just was a non-factor in those big games down the stretch. And then they re-signed him for essentially the same deal they signed him for the year before. I thought maybe there was a chance. He played so well, he would have earned himself at least a chance to compete on a roster for a open left tackle roster spot. I mean, clearly the guy showed that he could play left tackle in the NFL, and those positions are coveted. So Seattle's, thankfully we re-signed him. He's coming back. We don't really have to worry in 2026 about the tackle position. But as you said, Charles Cross is signed through 2030. He's got a couple of void years on his deal after that. The Abe Lucas on the right side is signed through 2028. I think that's where the conversation kind of starts and gets interesting for me, in that John Schneider's kind of a guy who's looking at, he's got a 3-4 year plan always. And this draft class is intriguing enough to me on the depth side. They're not going to expend a first round pick. There would be no need to at this point, unless they had a plan for Abe Lucas. They were worried, A, about his knee, or B, wanted to move him for whatever reason. It just doesn't make any sense to me, given that he's such a perfect fit in this offense. But you never know.
And you look at last year, where he was healthy the entire year and played well the entire year. And why would you move him? Like, he's the guy you want there. So
exactly. So, but when you go beyond the top guys, and we're talking about Francis Mauianaha, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's going to be a lockdown right tackle in this league for a long time. I think he might go higher than expected in the draft, even because he's just an anchor on the right side and kind of a plug and play guy for a decade. Spencer Fano, a good scheme fit for the Seahawks if they decided to go that way, but he's going to be gone by pick 32. Caden Proctor, same thing. I think you kind of get interesting in value wise if Seattle was going to expend a first round pick at 32. Milroe, Freeling, best scheme fit, I think, for the Seahawks. Super athletic, can get out in space, all the things you're looking for. I just don't see it, right? And we talked about that. Caleb Lumen, same thing. Excellent first step explosion. He can get to a spot. Great upside for the outside zone stuff. This is kind of where it gets interesting for me. So if Seattle drops back, say 4 to 5 picks, and you're in the mid 30s still, Seattle could draft a guy with not the expectation that he comes in and starts right away, but gives you another developmental tackle on the roster that is just plug and play anytime, and kind of a hedge against the injury there over with Abe Lucas, and can kind of sit behind 3 really good offensive tackles in his first year. Not real expectations to come in and have an impact right away, but is somebody that's in place as a hedge on your roster, or provides an asset. To me, there's a low probability chance, but what I'm saying is there is a chance. It's not like it's a 0 chance that John Schneider would draft a tackle in this class. It seems unlikely to me, but I think it's worth the conversation, because John Schneider kind of goes outside the box now and again.
I think it's 0% chance that they draft a guy with the expectation that he sits for 2 years. Not if they use that 6th round pick or something like that, but in the 40s, like you were saying, I think I think there's a 0% chance of that happening, because they have a need on the offensive line.
But let's have this conversation.
If they draft a guy that high, you draft a guy in the top 50 picks, you expect him to be a starter on day 1.
They've always come out, though, and said, we don't care. We're not looking at position when we draft. We're literally trying to load our team with the best talent available. And if they get to that point in the draft, let's say 38, and they've got a list of 5 guys.
For a starter. You're still looking for a starter. It
doesn't
have to be,
you are. But
we have
maybe
to get a
they're
starter
saying,
at
okay,
corner. We should get a starter. We should get a guy.
Maybe Spencer Fano is sitting there for whatever reason, or Milroe Freeling, or Lumen, if he's the guy, and they're like, we grade him out higher than Abe Lucas. We're going to take him, and we're going to figure this out. Like we're going to figure it out. We're either going to, put Abe up for a trade or whatever. I'm just saying, stuff like this happens in the NFL all the time. And John Schneider talks specifically about these kind of things. Like, listen, if a guy's sitting there and it's the best value on our board, and we're going to take that player and we're going to figure it out on the back end. I'm not saying it's the ideal thing. I agree with you, Keith, on the value and you don't draft at this position in the draft, especially with 4 picks, if you're not going to come away with an impact player, a starter, or a high rotation value guy. I agree. I totally agree. But I'm saying John Schneider
But a
views
guy
that
won't be
lens
on
a
his
slightly larger
a guy
overall
won't be
picture.
on the board at that spot where they will consider them a great positional value and whatever. Um, if he's not going to play for 2 years.
They would have a plan. He wouldn't not play for 2 years. This would be you pull the trigger on this. They have a plan.
That's the point that I wanted to make. If they pull the trigger, and let's say they draft a guy, like Lemieux, it will not be for him to sit because they have the other two guys. It will be
Or
for
they
him to
decide to move him
play.
inside. Or they move
There
him
you go.
inside.
They will take the player and they will put him at right guard and say, "Here, come learn. Player next to Abe Lucas, learn at right guard. If somebody gets hurt, we'll move you outside. If not, you've got a starting spot." They won't be drafting a guy in the top 50 picks with the idea that they're going to sit and not play. They will be drafting that player to get them on the field, and it will be either because they move a guy, which I don't think they will because they just re-signed them, and so the cap implications are rather unhappy.
Yes.
But it will be,
yes.
We're going to have you learn the NFL playing at guard next to a guy, and then after a year or so, we'll see if we can move you back out where you belong.
Or he's so good on the inside, you leave him there.
Yeah. But that's the type of thing that you're looking at. You're not looking, you seriously are not looking at drafting a guy in the top 50 and then asking him or expecting him not to play. That's just not the way the NFL works. And so it's not, you're right. It's not this isn't a positional value kind of, you have to draft a guy that is at a position of need. No, it's got to be a player of a certain quality. And if you don't expect them to play for 2 years, they shouldn't be on your board in the top 50. That's the
thing. Okay. So that's a great point. And it's a factor for sure. Talk to me a little bit about some of the players that you've looked at we can continue to talk about pick 32 or pick, if they drop back, pick 40 range or whatever. Do you have a couple guys in that range that you want to talk about, or do you want to move back further than that and have a conversation?
I want to move back further than that because there's a couple guys that I like that are in that range, at 64 that I think fit Seattle, fit where they're at because they're guys that can move inside. Like Jennings Dunker out of Iowa, 6'5", 319. He's not quite as long, being 6'5" versus like 6'7", like some of these people. And so kind of has that he might move inside. If he doesn't, he's going to be on the right side anyway. Type of profile, I think he's going to be in there. But this guy can just he blocks with tremendous power and just moves guys. And
he's definitely a tone setter type of guy, but I could see him moving inside as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like he's a guy that I think if he can move in and he's got that he's the type of guy that you would want because of that attitude that like blocks through the whistle, that you don't push him around, he pushes you around kind of thing. And it's a good fit. I think that at 64, you're drafting him with the idea that he's going to be your right guard on day one.
Yes.
And he has the ability to be your right tackle if you need him to. And so that's kind of the player that I've been looking for and looking at.
I think the agility thing kind of freaks me out a little bit. He's got shorter arms. I think he does move inside in the NFL, 33.5-inch arms. His explosiveness kind of is okay. I mean, the shuttle is okay, 74th percentile. The broad jump is 80th percentile. His 10-yard split, though, worries me a little bit. Getting out in space at 1.83. I'd like to see that in the 1.79, 1.78 range for offensive guard. Ideally, I think that's, on the left side, with Gray, that's where he's at. But on the right side, I think, you can probably get away with that a little bit more. I think he's got a higher floor than some of the prospects at guard in this draft, but a lower ceiling a little bit.
Yeah.
So and therefore I think he's a safer player, if that makes sense. But I could see that at 64, and maybe if he's hanging around for whatever reason at 96, or you're moving around in the draft a little bit to target him, and it's, he goes in the 70s or whatever, or 80s, I could see him be a guy that would fit at right guard more than right tackle.
So, and then you look at the guys that are consensus in the same kind of range. Caleb Tierman, out of Northwestern, is not a guy that I would see the Seattle looking at, even though same level of same range in the draft, because he's 6'8". He's 323. Now he has
6'8".
He has that length. He is a tackle. He is not a guy that can slide inside. He will lose leverage on every play, and defensive tackles will get under his pads. And
he's got really short arms for that height.
Yeah. But he's still 6'8". And he's got good feet and whatever, but he just also he's not a powerful player. He's a guy that gets to spots and wins with his feet and technique and that kind of stuff. And but he's really tall. And guards tend to be a little shorter, tackles tend to be taller. It's just kind of the nature of where trying to win with leverage and not let guys get under your pads. And you don't want a 6'8" guy in the middle. And so Blake Miller is similar in that. This guy's 6'7". I just think that he is a guy that I think he'll be a good tackle, especially a good right tackle in the NFL. I just don't see him as a guy that can slide inside, and so therefore, I don't see him being as valued as high to the Seahawks as other teams, because they've got a right tackle, right? So they would need they're drafting a guy who can play right tackle and maybe be the long-term plan there. But it's the right guard of today. And so that's why I looked at Dunker, and then I would look again at Drew Shelton as another guy out of Penn State. This is a guy that's a little lower, maybe a guy at 96, or if they move off 96 and get down to 103 or something like that, that's where I would look for him. This is a guy that he has quick feet. He moves well. He gets out in space well. He can mirror and engage linebackers. They're not outmaneuvering him out in space in order to get around him to get to the ball carrier, that type of thing. And at 6'5", that leverage concern isn't there. You've got a guy that has the feet to play tackle and to play it well, but has also the ability to play guard and play that well. So I think that's another guy. So that I would look at. But again, we're looking at 96 to 110 in that range.
Yeah, I think that when we get into, say, I don't know that I would necessarily take this guy at 96, but if we happen to pick up another pick, we drop down from 32 into, say, the 40 range, pick up a fourth rounder in the 109 to 120 range. This is where I would take a look at maybe a guy like Brian Parker out of Duke.
Yeah.
He's listed as a right tackle, but he's going to move inside in the NFL. He's got 32.5-inch arms. 6'5", 309, fits the physical profile, athletic profile upside that they're looking for. Shows up on tape, on the right side. But I think that he's got enough tools that you can develop him. This would be a guy that doesn't have any expectation, comes in to compete, kind of a thing with Cable do and the other guys that we've got on the roster on the right side there. But we've already seen Christian Haynes not work out. It would behoove, I think, the Seahawks to bring in another guy that's competing. Now, this show is supposed to be about tackles, but I think you can see the pattern here of our discussion, is that I think there's enough guys here, especially if you take a look at the guard class combined with the tackle class, where guys could move inside. There's a lot of opportunity here to add to your offensive line room. You're running back the entire room, right? All 13 players that you have rostered on your offensive line, or 14 or whatever it is, are coming back and returning. So you're going to have to be pretty decent to break through and find a roster spot. I think that's where we're at as far as having these discussions with the interior and then the offensive tackle class, Keith, is is it even worth having the conversation? Because we're literally running back a Super Bowl winning class, a position group on our team. But it is for the future. We are talking about, this year, next year, developing somebody. We're talking mid rounds here. There's no expectations to come in and impact right away, but a guy that can hang around and really be an upgrade to your roster on that second tier, the Cable do tier, the Mason Richmond guy, are those guys the Christian Haynes, are we going to hang on to those guys? Are they worth it? Are they going to ever break through? Are they going to earn any snaps at any time? And we've got another player in Oluwatimi as well that's hanging around, but hasn't broken through, hasn't earned the snaps. Now, you could argue he's won the job at a couple different times in camp, but they've always gone back to other guys. So, a guy like Brian Parker II would be a guy I could see the Seahawks spending a pick on. If it's a value pick later on in the draft, that is, an additional value pick that they pick up via trade, then he begins to make sense. Otherwise, it's late round developmental guys, Jude Brownie out of Boston College, or the guy from Wake Forest, I can't pronounce his name, Amoe. Seems interesting, but beyond that, I'm just not sure that there's really a good scheme fit guy on this for tackle that I would consider bringing on this year.
Do you know they had Brian Parker play center at the Shrine Bowl?
Oh, okay. Now that to me is interesting,
because so we know he can play tackle. He did it in college. I think that the transition to being an NFL tackle will be a difficult one. I think he can get there. I think his tape kind of shows that he's got the skill, but jumping from Duke to the NFL at tackle is going to be a process. We'll use that word.
Well, and he's a little undersized too at 309, but he'd be a good prospect, especially if he's got, the upside mentally to handle that job on the inside. Man, that to me becomes a really great pick in the 4th or 5th round for somebody, because then you've got a guy that can play 5 positions on your offense.
Yeah, he can play 5 positions, or at least play four. Yeah. And I would say I would leave left tackle off the list. But he can still. But it's like Josh Jones, right? If you can play 4 positions on the offensive line, you become valuable on game day, because there's the guys that don't suit up, the healthy scratches and that kind of stuff. You only have 46 guys that you can put in uniform. And so having a guy that can back up a bunch of positions is valuable, because that means that one of those developmental guys, like a Bryce Cable do, doesn't have to be one of the guys that you have in uniform ready to play, because you've got someone who can do multiple things. And so that's the kind of stuff that you look at with roster building, is you got to have some of that flexibility at positions like the offensive line. And a guy like Josh Jones has a ton of value for that reason. And a guy like Brian Parker is going to have a ton of value for that reason. And I think that would be a great pick if they move off 96 and move down to like, let's say 110, move down 15 spots and or 111 and pick up some extra picks, pick up some a fifth rounder or whatever. Um, Man, that Brian Parker just becomes a very enticing
Mm-hmm.
prospect for them to go get.
So I think that kind of covers it for the offensive tackle class. I mean, you could go deeper, and it's probably worth a conversation. But Seattle only has 4 picks in this draft currently, in a 6th
Yeah.
round pick. I'm not sure you're going to pick up any guy that's going to be any better than Cable do and the other guys we have on the roster. Certainly, we can take a look at that. But let's have a conversation about positional value in general.
Mm-hmm.
We had this discussion the other day just about how this draft lines up a little differently for Seattle for a couple of reasons. They just won the Super Bowl. They've only got 4 picks. They pick last in every round. Does positional value still factor in the equation for John Schneider in this draft? And so hold on 1 second.
Okay.
And they've got, usually they come into a draft where they've kind of handled their positional needs fairly well. But in this draft, I think you and I have both established there's still 4 or 5 areas of positional need heading into this draft. So, and those would be wide receiver, potentially, running back, certainly, offensive guard, potentially on the right side anyway. And then edge rusher, cornerback, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but they've only got 4 picks. Does positional value factor in on any one of those picks that they currently have?
Well,
like, would they draft the running back at 32? And obviously that would piss off a certain segment of the Seahawks population, but would it be any surprise to you?
It wouldn't. They've used 2nd round picks on running backs, and they just lost Ken Walker, who was a major cog in the offense, especially in the playoffs because Zach Charbonnet had been injured, and so they it was Walker or Walker, and he stepped up big time and got got him a Super Bowl win. I really think he was a major piece of the offense being good enough for them to win that. But the thing is with like, you look at, okay, if they don't draft a player at running back and you've got to go with guys like Holani and Jacardier Wright as your, 2nd tier behind Charbonnet, or really your 1st tier for the first few weeks until Charbonnet is 100%.
Okay. Maybe Cam Akers, Velus Jones is there too.
Yeah. And, Cam Akers certainly has the talent physically to get the job done. Now, he's never really worked out at the 2 teams that he's been with. And there's reason to suspect, there's something going on there, but physically talented guy. And so,
and should come into camp as healthy as he's been in 2 years.
Yes, absolutely.
And the load just isn't there either. I mean, there's some upside there, but yeah, between the years, I don't know what's going on. Obviously, the Seahawks held on to him, so that is encouraging to me.
He's very much got that Kristen Michael like aura to him, where just a physically incredibly gifted athlete who just can't seem to get on the field, and it's weird. But multiple teams, multiple coaching staffs have been like, wow, this guy's really talented. We'd rather play someone else.
So let's get back to the core question. What is the core question, Keith, as far as positional value and draft strategy and roster building?
Well, I think in this case, it's, as the Seahawks, are they missing starters where they need to reach for a player? I would say no. So you want to avoid reaching, but to the team and to the roster as it's currently built, what is the most valuable position for them to go draft a player?
Edge and corner.
You go the defense on both for the top two. So I would go probably
But if we're talking positional value,
yeah, like but I'm just saying, no, what's the most important thing that they have to go fill? Because we're not talking starter, but they do need a player.
if I would list it as importance,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great question, because Tariq Woolen, for all the faults, had some serious upside and some really good play.
Yeah.
And if we were to miss his talent level on the offense and we just put a replacement level player back there, I think the defense as a whole would either stay somewhat the same because the defense is so good all around him, or slightly degrade. And I would say cornerback might be my number one positional need and positional value matchup at pick 32 or in that range.
Yes. See, that's what I would say is that going into this draft class, I feel like that the team needs a corner. It doesn't need a starter because you've got both of your starters, but you need a guy that's going to play significant snaps as a rotational, your third cornerback, right? Which in this case is probably your dime player because
Yes.
Emanwari
Yeah,
is going to play.
You're going to get at least 40% of the snaps if that player is available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
you don't want to me, sorry to interrupt. You don't want Pritchett to take those snaps. At least I don't anyway.
You don't have to start. He can earn, if he earns them, fine, they're his.
Agreed.
Right? Because we would have said the same thing about Kobe Bryant 3 years ago. Right? We were like,
totally,
oh my God, you do not want him on the field on defense. And then
so true.
he stepped up and improved, and we were both like,
so true.
Dude, this kid can play. And so yeah, I would say that about Jeremiah Pritchett. Like right now, I don't want to see him on the field on defense because when we have seen him on the field on defense, bad things happen.
He gets picked on. There's no question.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do well in those situations.
Yeah. So but maybe he comes in with another year of coaching. And they always talk about how the defensive backs coach is such a great teacher. That maybe he comes in, with another comes in and just shows that he can do it. But I'm not banking on that. That is him making a major step is not part of my plan. That would be a pleasant surprise if it happens. I know I need a guy. And so now, do I need a guy enough that I'm going to pick him at 32 in the first round? If there's other guys I like more.
Here's my thought process on that, Keith.
I don't want to ever.
You've got a guy like Avian Terrell sitting there, or Colton Hood, Brandon Cease, Chris Johnson. If you've got those guys sitting there at 32, or you drop back a little bit, and you're looking at your own roster, and they do this, they compare the draft picks to their own guys and grade those guys out and all that kind of stuff. And if they think that they can upgrade either Josh Jobe or Pritchett, they pull that trigger, and they need a guy anyway. I mean, you've got an injury situation. It's a fairly light room beyond that at this point. I mean, they brought a guy in with former first round draft pick a couple weeks ago, but there's no expectations there that he comes in and competes for a starting role. That's kind of
so. But you look at this
at this point,
and
unless proven otherwise.
Josh,
so I would say, you come in and you expend a high draft pick, and you don't think
Josh Jobe was an undrafted free agent, right? Rick Woolen was a 5th round pick. Do you need to spend a high draft pick at corner? Or can you get some guys and know that it's likely that somebody will emerge from a group?
You can get some guys. I love that comment. Yeah, I mean, John Schneider kind of said the same thing about running back the other day when he was on the radio. He's like, yeah, we can just get some guys. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I think that, Witherspoon was a number 5 pick overall. Witherspoon just agreed to a 5th year. He didn't agree to it, but they just said, we're gonna put the 5th year option on you. And I think that this would be the year to do a couple things in the draft that you would hedge against Witherspoon in a long-term contract situation, because he's going to get paid like the number 1 cornerback in the NFL. And JSN is going to get paid as the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. And your roster, your book, your balance sheet becomes part of the equation now as far as how you are building your roster. And maybe shit goes south with the Witherspoon negotiations and they can't reach a deal. At least you've got a guy, a high draft pick on the roster that's able to come in and fill those shoes as best as possible, right? That would be a reason to pull a trigger on a high draft pick in this draft. And there's some legit, like the corner class in this draft is pretty good through round 3. And they may want to take advantage. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if they use that first pick on a corner.
Well, that's the other part of this discussion that I think is important is, you've got 4 picks, right? And you want to come out of the draft with a corner. This corner group is deep enough that you can probably wait into the 3rd round to get your guy.
I agree.
But the edge rusher group in this draft, I don't think is deep enough that you can wait till round 3 to get your guy.
Yeah. Not an impact rotation guy like Mafe was. If you want a Mafe level replacement player, you're going to have to go at least no later than 64.
Yeah. And so that's kind of is you compare what the team needs and its value to the outcome on Sundays versus what the draft has. And I think that is a positional value discussion that I think is lost on a lot of fans. Let's take running back, because running back's one of those that is constantly debated. Some people are like, running backs don't matter. Like, don't bother ever drafting one.
But you do have to consider supply and demand.
Yeah. And so if you're looking at, trying to find a guy like, Nicholas Singleton, right? He's the 5th running back on the board, probably, or Mike Washington, who might be the 6th running back on the board. Like, these are guys. This isn't very deep.
Mike Washington is going to surprise some people in this draft, Keith. I think he's probably going to be the 3rd guy off the board.
Yeah, probably. But if you want a guy like that, there's 6 running backs in this draft class that I would, I would draft.
I think if you want a starter out of this draft, there's 6.
Yeah, you have to draft that early, because if you wait, there won't be a guy there. There won't be a guy there at all.
And they're going to go higher than you think they will go. Like Jadarian Price, for example, on the consensus big board is right around 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
Consistently in mock drafts that I'm doing, he's going 38, 36. Yeah. Daniel Jeremiah just put out a draft, his mock draft 2.0 or whatever it is, 3.0, where Jadarian Price went to the Seahawks at 32.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. There was some pushback from the Seahawks community, and like it or not, you heard the argument about positional value, and you heard, oh my God, that would be the worst possible thing. I completely disagree. I am on board with Jeremiah there at 32. If that's the best player at the spot, and it kind of reminds me of the Gray Zabel pick from 2025 at 18. It's like everything converged. The need and positional value lined up perfectly, and we made the selection, and it was a no-brainer, right? The pick at 32, you could have an edge rusher there, but maybe he's lower on the board than Jeremiah Love, especially when you factor in need, positional need, and all that kind of stuff. Price would come in and immediately be the starter at running back and share the load with Charbonnet when he comes back, and there will be some other guys in that mix, but he would be the guy, and he would be the guy for the next, if they chose him at 32, he could potentially have that fifth year. They probably wouldn't do a fifth year option on a running back, but you'd have 4 years at low cost for a starting running back that is going to continue to add the dynamic ability to run the ball in an offense that is the most run heavy offense in the league.
Yeah.
To me, I think that pushes that positional value up, higher than most teams.
It does. And I think that there's I don't know, Twitter's just been a weird thing, and it's become, like I said, that people just hate the running back position. And I get that a lot of running backs, don't do as well with their second contract.
And that's still after watching what Walker did in the last 3 games of the season.
Yeah, but it's just the wear and tear in the body, and so therefore there's not as much value because you're only getting them for 3 years versus other guys that you could get for a decade and all of that. But I think that there's the pushback against the running back position is overblown, and there's some value to those arguments, but I think that they've taken it way too far. The pendulum has swung as far as it's going to get, and basically to the point where you will see people literally say that running backs don't matter at all, that anyone with a certain minimum talent is good enough.
All you have to do is watch an NFL game to understand that is absolutely not true.
Yeah, and I don't believe that at all, because you look at why does Ken Walker matter and George Holani not, right? Because
why did Ken Walker just get a $15 million deal with the Kansas City Chiefs? Because running backs matter to the Kansas City Chiefs.
One of the smarter teams in the NFL. So I don't buy that at all. But when you look at this draft class, they need a wide receiver. I think they can get a wide receiver late. That can at least come in. I mean, who was the kid they drafted last year in the 5th round?
Torrey Horton.
It was a 5th round pick, and he was a key rotational piece until he got hurt. You trade down at some point and have an extra pick in rounds 4. Get your wide receiver there. In this class,
I do say this though, as far as positional value and wide receiver is concerned, that does align at pick 32 as well. Like, I could see them picking high and solving that issue and having somebody to pair with JSN for a long term. You've got Cooper Kupp, where he's probably going to age out after this season. You've got Torrey Horton, who had a major shin injury that we don't really know exactly what that is, and a history of injury in college. And then you've got a Rashid Shaheed, who, while is an accomplished receiver, has never really caught over 45 balls in a year and has some injuries as well, and didn't show anything in the Seahawks offense, which we're running back again this next year. So that's kind of an unknown. So this wide receiver room is actually, to me, is a higher need than I think that we're saying out loud.
I would agree with that. I think you can get by for another year because it's literally the same guys that you had that your offense won a Super Bowl. And the only player that you'd think might take a step down talent-wise because of age would be Kupp. I think you could get by. You could get by with what you have. But
by the way, Keith, did you hear about Jake Bobo?
No, I thought he re-signed. Didn't he?
He got an offer sheet with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he signed it. And so he's looking for a pay raise. Not a big. I mean, it's the tender. He signed the tender with them. It's like $3.5 million or whatever. Does Seattle want to pay Drake Bobo 3.5?
Well, if they don't, then they get a draft pick.
No, there's no compensation traded back.
This is the
it's one of those tenders. It's like the original round tender or whatever.
Original round tender and an original round for a undrafted player is nothing.
Right.
Okay, I thought at that number was high enough that I thought it was like a more than an original.
They didn't give him
round.
a second round tender.
Okay. Yeah, so they might have to match in order to keep him, or they might let him walk. I mean, this is a guy that's.
I was just going to ask. My question
catches.
would be, what did that do? What did that do to the depth in the wide receiver room? I know he's mostly a special teams guy, right? And he's only given you 14 catches over 4 years.
Yeah, he's a guy he's a special teams player and a guy who blocks really well on the outside, but he's not a guy that you're going to count on at receiver. If you're running him out there as your, third receiver, you're in trouble. He doesn't get separation. So,
yeah, right. So I think this draft is okay through the third round. Like, you could get a role player type level receiver through the third round. Obviously, you're going to get a starter level player, I think, through your first round pick. And then after that, you're still probably looking at maybe number 2 wide receiver talent with that second pick. And then after that, it really pretty much drops.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking, around the second round pick, maybe the third round, because they're not looking for the number 1. They've got a number 1, right? They're looking for a guy that's going to come in, give them some production, maybe take Cooper Kupp's spot a year from now, be some protection against injury to a guy like Shaheed at this point, or if Torrey Horton's shin injury is bad enough that it extends into the season, you're not looking to go get a number 1. You don't need that, and that's what I was trying to get into. I think they can get that in the third round. I think they can get the player they need in the third round.
I don't know. They could get it in the third round, but they might want upside. Like, for example, a player like Chris Bell out of Louisville, a guy that had an ACL in November, doesn't need to come in and necessarily have an impact right away. But here's a fringy first round talent with the ACL that they would have to pick up at like 64, maybe slightly even before that, but 64, but could give you totally number 2 value, long term. A guy that's like 6'3", 222 pounds, runs like a running back after he has possession of the ball, yards after catch, nightmare for corners. A guy like that would be super intriguing to me. Now, and a later round guy like Ted Hurst or Bryce Lance or Stribling, Jeff Caldwell, those guys later on, Eric McAllister and with our 6th round pick would be interesting. A few other, Cyrus Allen is interesting to me. To me, this is a contender for, if you take a look at positional value, this is certainly a contender for the higher round pick, 32 if they wanted to. If they were really interested in upgrading the position, felt like they could upgrade the position at 32 and pulled the trigger at upgrading the position at 32, I would have no problem with it, because JSN needs some help to take some pressure off him. And Cooper Kupp's, again, aging out. We don't know exactly what we've got with Shaheed. We've got upside there, but no proven, like, he's not a proven commodity to me. Now, he's done it in the NFL, but with Darnold in this offense, something's not lining up yet. And then, of course, Torrey Horton, we just don't know. If it turns out, great. And you've got 4 amazing wide receivers on your roster, could be worse.
Yeah. And so, but the point I was trying to make is that I think that you can get, if you want to come out of this draft with a running back and a wide receiver that are both going to be meaningful contributors in 2026, you've got to take the running back first. because you get them.
That's a crazy thing to say out loud.
If you don't get your running back in the top 40,
though.
if you don't get your running back in the top 40, you're not getting one who's going to be a significant contributor in 2026. Because I don't see there being enough enough quality running backs in this draft class for you to get one after that. And then with wide receiver, I think you can get a quality player, a guy like Bell that you mentioned, that can be a quality contributor this year at 64.
I think that you could get a guy like Mike Washington Jr., who I have questions about. Now, he looked amazing this last year. He looked amazing at the combine. He was one of the combine workout warriors. With that height, weight, speed combo, it's so enticing to pick a guy like that just for upside on athleticism. But as a running back, I've got a few questions. But at 64, I mean, if he's there and he's solving that problem, I get what you're saying about taking a running back early, but that really does pigeonhole you into just really needing to come away with Jadarian Price at all costs, because that's the guy you're really talking about. And
I don't agree with that.
If you trade back a little bit at 32 and you trade back to 40, he might be gone. Like, so you have to almost expend 32 or drop back just a couple of spots and grab him, because who else is there? It's like it's Jadarian Price, and then it drops down to Mike Washington. After that, you're all the way into the middle of the third round.
I don't consider Jadarian Price to be worth that. He is not.
But he's the only guy. So after Jeremiah Love, who's going to go top 10, you have Jadarian Price, who's currently on the big board at 48. But a lot of teams, the value,
but I don't
need
value
for running
Jadarian,
back is going to be so high. I think he's going to get overdrafted.
I don't value Jadarian Price.
Who do you like
in that round? I like Washington. I like Nicholas Singleton. I like Jonah Coleman. Jadarian Price at 203 and only runs a 4.5. Like, yeah, he's a versatile guy.
He's not
do a little bit of everything.
He's 208.
I got him as 203.
He was at the his pro day at 208. I think that I hear you. I mean, obviously, it's going to come down to preference, who they value, who fits in their scheme, who pass protects better overall. Jadarian Price, oh my God, I love that guy. Like, if you go watch him on film, he does everything really well. He's an outside zone guy.
What running back do they have that's only 200 and, let's split the difference, 205 pounds and runs a 4.5? The slow guy that they've got is Charbonnet, who runs a 4.5 at 225.
I agree. I think that they probably will be looking at Mike Washington. I mean, Mike Washington's as 224 at 6'3", right? And runs a 4.39.
No, he ran a 4.33. 4.39 was
really?
Singleton, who were at it at 219.
Okay.
Like, those are the guys. Those are the two guys, because you're replacing Walker, who ran like a 4.33. And so it's one of those two.
Walker ran a 4.45 or something like that.
No, he didn't. He was in the 4.3s.
Okay.
I
got it.
Look it up. But I think it's one of those two guys that they're looking at. And
you're right. Ken Walker ran a 4.38.
Okay, it's
at
slower
211 pounds, by the way.
Yeah.
At the combine. So Jadarian Price is 208 at his pro day.
And
so I'm just saying.
Ran a 4.5.
I know. I get you. But, they had great success with Chris Carson as well.
Don't think, different offense completely. They also only had great success with Chris Carson for 1 year. So
what you're saying, so let's get back to the positional value discussion.
I was just saying, I think
So
that
you'd be fine.
because running back is, to me, one of the weakest positions in terms of depth in the draft. Because to me, there are 6 players and that are starting caliber. Love's going to go early, and then there's guys like Emmett Johnson that will go in
Yeah,
in the top 2
I don't
rounds,
like
but
him.
I'm not interested in.
Hmm.
So really, as far as I'm concerned, there's 5 players. Um, I'm looking at you have to move the guys at running back that you want up your draft board, because if you don't get one of them early, you're not getting one at all. You're not getting a player.
It's so true.
Um, Wide
Right.
receiver and corner, you can get away with maybe not getting that top tier guy, but getting the second tier player and still getting someone who can contribute in 2026 and be good, right? And
I
so
just
I
think
think
that
that is what you're
this
looking at.
strategy in general that you're talking about is really hamstringing John Schneider into picking certain players in a certain order. Am I wrong as far as what you're saying?
No, no, I'm just saying, like, it affects how you create your board, right? Because when you create your board and you have guys who's ranked, you know, everyone in the draft is ranked from 1 to 250, um, and a guy at running back, one of these top 5 guys, you might naturally think that, oh, they're going to be ranked 64th, but you have to move them up, and so instead of being ranked 64th, they're going to be ranked 55th because of the lack of depth at that position. And in a normal year, there are positions that are really deep, right? This is kind of a weird year that the bottom of the draft is pretty poor, but um, if there are positions where um, you're like, wow, there are just a ton of pick a position, um, ton of good off the ball linebackers in this one. And so if you miss out on a guy that at like 90 that you wanted, okay, there's another guy available at 110. And so you move those guys down a little bit because you can get a quality player later than normal
So
because there's a lot of them.
expand your thought a little bit and be John Schneider for just a second and talk to me about your roster building draft strategy in this draft, given the parameters that we know. Just came off of Super Bowl. You're running all your starters back, save 2 of them. And those 2 are, you can replace. What is your strategy considering, 2027, all the factors? Like how do you want to come out of this draft? Are you even a player? Like do you trade back and try to accumulate picks, or is your strategy to stick and pick and maybe even move up one spot, maybe take that 188 overall currently and combine it with a 2027 draft pick, of which we have 12 now, and try to move back up into a range where you can still get some sort of a impact
Hmm.
role player? How do you come out of this draft?
Well, I think that you can move back a little bit, accumulate some picks, and get guys that are going to come in and compete for roster spots and whatnot. But in this draft class, that is not the typical John Snyder go get. He wants to come out of most drafts with 10 or 11 guys. And in this draft, I think he comes out of this draft with 5 or 6 because it's not a deep draft, and you don't want a bunch of 6th round picks. There just
I
isn't the
also think
quality
there's a
there
chance that he
usually
comes
is.
out of this draft with just 3
Yeah, that's what I
and
mean.
he
I
sells
think that
the 188 for a future 5th.
I could see him doing that. Because the bottom end of this draft is not good. It's just not good. And so um, you want as many picks in the top 100 as you can get, and you don't want really anything after that. And so if they can
Right.
package that 6th round pick and a 2027 fourth rounder to get up into round 3 again and to get another guy, you do it. If someone will take that, trade, go for it. And you've got 12 picks next year. So giving up one to get another pick this year, that's in the top 100 where you can actually get a guy that's going to be, able to make a roster and
make your roster.
And then you do it. But you looking at, this is a team that's going to go into the draft wanting 5 guys, specifically 5 guys, because these are the 5 guys that they've lost, that they need to, that they feel like they need to replace. And they aren't comfortable waiting until after the draft between undrafted free agents and just free agents that are still available and trying to fill those holes. And so they might do that for 1 or 2 positions, but they're not doing that for 5. So I think as you build your draft board, you're going to see running backs higher on the draft board than you would normally put them. And you're going to see tackle, for instance, especially guys that can't move inside, lower on your draft board than you would normally put them. Now, if everything lines up and you're like staring at an offensive tackle that you just are like, why is this guy still available? He shouldn't be here. He should have gone 20 picks ago.
I can't leave the draft without him. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you're, you know what I mean? You've got a guy and you're just like, this guy just fell into our lap. We don't need him, but holy crap. You take him. But that has to be part of your draft strategy, is just, you have to be okay with that and make it work. But you've got a guy that pure talent, non-positional value at tackle that you'd rank, 40th, you move him down to 48th because you don't need a tackle. And then when you get at 64, if he's still there and he's 48th, right? That's why you put guys in order. Is you go ahead and you grab him. So I think it's just a matter of, like, you got to look at you can't just
I have a question for you on a player
running back stocks, move all those people down. Okay, go.
Yeah. Is there any reason at all where you could see John Schneider moving up a little bit? Taking a future 2027 pick, maybe if it's even like a second rounder combo with the 32 to go get a guy like Peter Woods, a guy that fits your roster really well. Sadiq, maybe at tight end, not that tight end, or Jordan Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State. Something that would invite you. Maybe Kendrick Falk is dropping a little bit, the Auburn edge rusher, or there's another edge that you really like, or a corner that is ranked as the highest on your board, and it falls, it was originally on the big board, your big board, at like 15, but falls into the 25 range. Is there any reason why you could see John Schneider moving up in this draft?
God, yes. And the player that the first player that I thought of when you started this was Jeremiah Love. If Jeremiah Love hits 15, John Schneider's going to be he's going to be on. Really? He's going to be on the phone, giving up what he needs to give up to move up there. I don't think Love gets outside of the top 6. But if he starts to fall a little bit.
Who was that running back last year that went in the top 10 that went to Vegas from Boise State? How did that work out? Does that make a lot of sense for a team like the Seahawks to trade your draft to move up? Now, what would it take to go for Love? Say Love falls out of the top 10. He's reached what point does it become enticing for John Schneider to move?
When it doesn't require a first round pick. You don't have to stick another first round pick to go get him. If you can pick up throw in a second round pick a year from now where you've got 12 picks, and get there, that's, I think, where you start looking at it.
So 16, 17,
Yeah.
18.
Somewhere in that range. He'd have to get to 15 before you started making calls.
And you'd have to give up 32, maybe 64 in a future third.
Oh, I was thinking you'd
and
give
just
up,
come out of the draft with.
No, you'd give up 32 and next year's second. If you can give up 32 and next year's second round pick to move up and get a guy,
but everyone knows next year's second is going to be in the 60s, right? And so you kind of have to. Would that be enough compensation to get a team to move off of 16 or 17? I don't know. I don't have the draft trade value chart in front of me to know.
You could, if you could give up, you'd have to give up. You're going to give up 32. You're going to give up at least a second round pick in the next year's draft. And then it's like whatever you need. Do you throw in this year's sixth rounder? Do you throw in next year's fourth rounder? Whatever. You've got to, those are the you're not giving up your first round pick next year. And I don't think you're giving up.
Interesting that you said that there's a player, and Julian and Jeremiah Love that you would move up for that. And that's the first player you thought of. That to me is wild, moving up for a running back. Wow. Now,
you know how many people
only a Super Bowl winning team could do that. Well, yes, but until they see him, right? Mm-hmm. And know how he would fit in the offense, and here's the weapon, and who cares how much it costs? Like, who cares? We got the player. Like, at the end of the day, it's all about players and getting back to the Super Bowl. And if it's a player that helps you get back to the Super Bowl, like, what's the big deal? What's the big deal?
Yeah.
It's just money and draft picks, and we got plenty of them next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was looking at corner.
Or Reuben Bain. Like, Reuben Bain's a dog, right? Like, he's a dog. And if he were to fall out of the top 10 for whatever reason, I know that they would love a guy like Caleb Downs.
Reuben Bain will not fall out of the top 10.
I get you.
There's no freaking way. Then again, I don't think there's any freaking way that Love falls out of the top 10. So, it's the same conversation. It's like, here in this mythical situation.
Another player that would be interesting to me is Ione, the interior offensive lineman from Penn State. That's a guy that's another dog that would be a complete and total scheme and roster fit for Seattle. If that guy started falling for some reason and got to 20, I think that would move John Schneider. I think Peter Woods, if you go look at Peter Woods, he's like a, not DeMarcus Lawrence. Who's the other guy on the roster? Sorry. Not Quinnen Williams.
Nawasu or Hill?
No, our other superstar defensive lineman that we traded for from the Giants or Jets or whatever.
Williams.
Yes. He's like a Peter Woods is a guy like that. At like not quite 300 pounds, but really close, 298, runs super well, moves, agility, disrupts everything, can set an edge, can move inside for you. A guy like that, because Williams is 33 this year, right? And if you can move the needle on a player like that, and it's only going to cost you a 2027 second or third round pick to move up to get him, that would be something that I would think John Schneider would be all over, because there's only a certain amount of blue chip players in this draft, and he's one of them.
One of the things that I look at is how do you want to build your team? What identity do you have? What do you want? And Macdonald wants to win in the trenches on every play. And so don't discount defensive tackle just because they have them, because they want to win on every play.
Yeah.
Right. And so a guy like that, I'd move up for.
Yeah.
You just put him
on. Especially if they're that convicted. Like, if they're that convicted where they're going to package picks and move up in this draft with only 4 picks, and they're going to essentially sell their 2026 draft to get one player, really, to come away with one player that's that. And I would be all in. I'd be just like,
Yeah,
okay, let's go.
He's going to be if they do that, it's going to be a defensive lineman or an edge rusher. I really think they
Yes.
wouldn't sacrifice a draft class for anyone else. You want to win at the line of
Yeah, not a
scrimmage, and
corner, I don't think.
you're gonna do it on defense. Those are the positions where I would say that they would do it. And the thing is, if you get another elite defensive tackle, okay, now Jerron Reed becomes a rotational piece where you can bring him in
And
off
should
the
be.
bench, and because you've got 3 other starters. And let's not forget Riley Mills for man.
Right.
Right, because God, that kid was a late 1, early 2 round talent. They got in round 5 because he was not expected to play last year because of his knee. Well, his knee's healthy now, so he's going to play at that level. So you can become 5 deep at a key position in the middle of that defense, and I don't know, opposing offensive coordinators just start crying. So
well, yeah, we'll see. It's interesting when I do mock drafts. Sometimes I come away with Cassius Howell. Sometimes it's Colton Hood or Zion Young, Brandon Cease, the cornerback. Sometimes TJ Parker falls, the edge rusher out of Clemson. But it's not very often that a player like Terrell, the cornerback out of Clemson, or Peter Woods falls. Like there are certain mocks that I do where Peter Woods goes just before we pick, and I'm like, okay, next time I'm going to trade up to 28, and then he goes 21 or whatever. So I never really get him, but I've looked at him enough to be like, I could see the Seahawks moving around to get that guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to cover?
No, I think let's get out of here. I expected this to be a short show, and we're at an hour and 11 minutes. So
yes, you did.
Let's come back and do a mock draft next, because we are now done with the offense and moving over to defense. Let's do a mock in between. That'll be fun. Those are always fun. So
yeah, no doubt. Okay. Find Keith on Blue Sky or Twitter, X at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWC Hawk, the show. You know all that good stuff. So when you find us, subscribe. That helps us out. And until next time, go Hawks.
go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.